The old library smelled of dust and forgotten secrets, its towering shelves whispering to those who dared to listen. Alexander Ward traced his fingers across ancient volumes until he reached a locked case, where the Piri Reis map lay under glass. His eyes burned with wonder, yet suspicion darkened his thoughts. "This map should not exist," Alexander muttered, his voice heavy with disbelief. Eleanor Price, his reluctant ally, lingered at the door, her skepticism evident. Eleanor said, "You're chasing shadows again, Alex." He ignored her warning, captivated by coastlines drawn centuries before explorers ever sailed them. The candlelight flickered across the parchment, casting ghostly outlines of continents not yet discovered. Alexander's obsession stirred a dangerous energy in the room, as if the map itself resisted exposure. For him, the journey had already begun, one that would test loyalties, reveal betrayals, and drag them all into the abyss of forbidden knowledge. The rain tapped against the library windows as Alexander scribbled frantic notes, piecing together the impossible coastlines with worn atlases. Eleanor sighed, her voice tinged with concern. Eleanor said, "You're risking your reputation chasing illusions." Alexander responded, "It's not illusion. This map shows Antarctica centuries before it was discovered." The intensity in his tone unsettled her, yet curiosity tugged at her reason. The sound of thunder echoed like an omen, shaking dust from the beams above. Books lay open in chaotic piles, each page a desperate clue to unravel a forbidden history. Eleanor paced, torn between walking away and staying tethered to Alexander's obsession. The candle's flame bent with every draft, shadows clawing across the parchment like restless spirits. For Alexander, the boundaries between reason and obsession had begun to blur, and the night felt as though it held secrets eager to be unearthed. Morning light seeped through dusty curtains, a pale reminder of reality intruding on Alexander's night-long obsession. His eyes were bloodshot, pages of notes scattered in a frenzy of ink. Eleanor poured coffee, her movements slow, weary of his fixation. She said, "You've been at this all night. At what cost?" Alexander muttered, "Every coastline matches perfectly. How could they know?" He slammed his palm onto the table, startling her. The map seemed to glimmer faintly, as if mocking their disbelief. Eleanor set the coffee down, hesitant but drawn closer, curiosity eroding her resistance. The silence between them was heavy, charged with both dread and wonder. The ancient parchment was no longer just an artifact. It had become a mirror to Alexander's unraveling soul. The line between genius and madness thinned as daylight crept into the room, illuminating secrets not meant for ordinary eyes. By late afternoon, Alexander carried the map into a secluded chamber of the library, a place untouched by most visitors. The air felt colder, heavy with forgotten whispers. Eleanor followed reluctantly, her footsteps echoing in the silence. "Why here?" she asked, her voice uneasy. Alexander replied, "This room hides what others fear to confront." He unfurled the map beneath a cracked skylight, the pale light making coastlines gleam unnaturally. Strange symbols etched along the edges pulsed faintly, as though alive under his touch. Eleanor's breath caught. Doubt gave way to awe. "It's like it wants to be read," she whispered. Alexander's smile was grim, obsessed. His obsession had crossed into reverence, as if the map itself were divine. The chamber groaned under the weight of their discovery, the silence broken only by their breaths and the eerie hum of ancient secrets waking. The air grew suffocating as shadows lengthened across the chamber. A figure appeared briefly in the corridor beyond the door, watching silently before retreating into darkness. Eleanor shivered, whispering, "Did you see that?" Alexander's eyes narrowed, but he forced calm. "We're not alone," he said, his voice steady yet laced with unease. He clutched the map tighter, unwilling to let go. The faint hum from the parchment grew stronger, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. Eleanor's pulse quickened, fear spreading through her as she realized they had drawn attention, not just from shadows of history, but from something alive and present. The map was no longer theirs alone. It was guarded. The sense of being hunted thickened, pressing down like invisible hands. Their discovery had awoken an ancient rivalry, and the true keeper of secrets had just taken notice. Alexander Ward pored over his notes in the library's secluded chamber, the faint hum of the Piri Reis map thrumming in his ears. His handwriting sprawled across pages, driven by obsession. Eleanor Price leaned against the cold wall, arms crossed, her patience wearing thin. Eleanor said, "You haven't slept, Alexander. This isn't research anymore, it's madness." He ignored her, pointing at the faint lines carved into the map's edges. "These are coordinates," he whispered, his eyes gleaming with hunger for discovery. Thunder rolled in the distance, the storm outside mirroring the tension within. Eleanor exhaled sharply, conflicted by his intensity. She had seen his brilliance before, but this was different. This bordered on obsession. Every candle flicker seemed to pulse with the map's rhythm, as if it had fused with Alexander's mind. The pursuit of truth was consuming him, and Eleanor knew the cost was rising. Later that night, Eleanor returned with Professor Richard Hale, a historian known for his skepticism. Hale adjusted his glasses, his measured gaze scanning the map with calm disbelief. Richard said, "Impressive forgery. That's all this is." Alexander bristled, anger flaring at the dismissal. "Forgery? Look closer," he snapped, pointing at coastlines unseen until modern charts. Eleanor placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder, urging calm. Hale remained unmoved, his tone dry. Maps reveal ambition, not truth. Yet his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt, a hesitation he tried to mask. Alexander caught it, his obsession fed by the tiniest crack in Hale's certainty. The storm rattled the windows once more, and for a moment all three stood locked in silent tension. Alexander's resolve only grew sharper. If experts doubted him, he would prove them wrong at any cost, even if it meant descending into dangerous depths. Stacks of atlases and navigational charts spread across the wooden table, a chaotic battlefield of theories and disputes. Alexander jabbed at the maps with his pen, connecting ancient coastlines with modern geography. "See? It aligns perfectly," he insisted, frustration dripping from his voice. Eleanor moved closer, curiosity overtaking doubt as her eyes traced the impossible accuracy. Richard smirked faintly, yet his hand lingered too long on the parchment, betraying unease. "Coincidence," he said flatly, though the word lacked conviction. The candles burned lower, their flames struggling against the draft, seeping through cracks in the chamber. The map glowed faintly, almost pulsing beneath their scrutiny, daring them to unlock its secrets. The silence between them thickened, charged with tension, each person teetering between disbelief and surrender to the unexplainable. In that moment, the line between fact and myth blurred dangerously thin. The storm had eased, replaced by a haunting stillness. The chamber felt suffocating, its air heavy with secrets. Suddenly, a tall man stepped from the shadows, his presence unexpected and unsettling. His name was Marcus Steele, an enigmatic traveler known only in whispers. Marcus said, "You are meddling with things better left hidden." His voice was calm yet carried weight. Alexander stiffened, but his eyes flared with curiosity. "And who are you to decide what should remain hidden?" Marcus smiled faintly, his eyes unreadable. Eleanor stepped between them, tension bristling. She said, "Why are you here?" Marcus replied, "To warn you, the map is no discovery, it is a key." The words cut through the silence, leaving unease in their wake. Alexander's obsession deepened. A warning was never enough to turn him back. The mysterious outsider had only added more fire to his restless pursuit. Marcus's words hung in the air like a curse. Alexander leaned closer, his voice low but defiant. "If it's a key, then I must know what it unlocks." Eleanor shook her head, fear tightening her voice. "Keys open doors, Alex, sometimes ones that should stay closed." Richard adjusted his glasses, unease written across his face. "I've studied many maps, but never one that unsettled me this much." Marcus's expression darkened, his warning tone sharpening. "Every secret demands a price. The map has been guarded for centuries for a reason." Alexander's determination hardened, ignoring the dread lacing the room. The map glowed faintly again, as if acknowledging his resolve. Lightning cracked through the window, bathing the chamber in cold white light. Each of them stood at the edge of something vast, dangerous and irreversible, and none could turn away now. The candlelight wavered as Alexander Ward traced a trembling finger along the map's southern edge. The lines curved into shapes unmistakably resembling Antarctica, centuries before its official discovery. His breath caught, a mix of awe and terror. "It's impossible," he whispered, though his eyes gleamed with vindication. Eleanor Price leaned closer, her skepticism faltering. She said, "No cartographer could have drawn this without modern tools." Richard Hale shook his head, his voice firm but wavering. "Then someone, or something, guided them." The words unsettled them all, echoing in the quiet chamber. The storm had passed, but the silence outside felt heavier than thunder. Marcus Steele watched with his arms folded, his warning presence unshaken. Alexander's obsession deepened as he realized the map was not only a record of lands, but perhaps a doorway into forbidden knowledge waiting to be unlocked. The following morning, they ventured into the library's restricted archives where dust-coated manuscripts lay forgotten. The air was heavy, filled with the musk of age. Eleanor brushed cobwebs aside, muttering, "This place feels cursed." Alexander pried open a chest of brittle scrolls, his excitement uncontained. He said, "Here, records that mention travelers no one remembers." Richard adjusted his spectacles, his skepticism unraveling with every faded ink stroke he deciphered. "These writings, they suggest contact with lands across oceans centuries earlier," he admitted reluctantly. Eleanor froze as she uncovered a faded family crest sketched on one page, tied inexplicably to her lineage. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "This can't be." Marcus observed quietly, his eyes sharp, as though he already knew. The archives whispered truths long buried, and each discovery bound them tighter to a mystery none of them could escape. By dusk, their study was interrupted by a subtle disturbance. The map, lying spread across the table, began to hum faintly, vibrations rattling nearby ink bottles. Alexander leaned in, enthralled, whispering, "It's alive." Eleanor's voice trembled. "Maps don't breathe, Alex." Richard recoiled, adjusting his glasses nervously, his face pale. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his voice low but firm. "The Guardians will not let this go unpunished." The candles flickered violently, as though reacting to the unseen energy. Fear gripped Eleanor as symbols along the parchment pulsed faintly like beating hearts. Alexander ignored their fear, transfixed by the rhythm, muttering calculations under his breath. The chamber seemed to close in, oppressive and suffocating, as though the walls themselves wanted to crush the secret. It was no longer study, it was communion with something ancient and incomprehensible. The chamber's oppressive silence broke as Eleanor confronted Alexander directly. She slammed a book shut, her voice sharp with fear and anger. "You're losing yourself. This isn't truth, it's madness." Alexander turned slowly, his expression weary but relentless. "Truth demands sacrifice, Eleanor. Can't you see? We're on the verge of rewriting history." Richard's voice quavered as he interjected, "Or we're on the verge of destroying ourselves." Eleanor's eyes burned with frustration, torn between her loyalty and her dread. She said, "Not every door should be opened." Alexander's jaw tightened, his obsession stronger than her warning. Marcus leaned against the wall, watching silently, his unreadable expression betraying nothing. The room felt divided, loyalties fraying under the strain. Each of them faced a choice: stand with Alexander's pursuit of forbidden knowledge or resist the pull of truths too dangerous to uncover. Night settled heavily as the group prepared to leave the chamber, yet Marcus blocked the doorway with a commanding stance. His voice cut through the silence. "You've already gone too far. The keepers know." Alexander bristled, anger flashing in his eyes. "Then let them come. I won't stop now." Eleanor's face drained of color, fear settling deep in her chest. She said, "What if they're right, Alex? What if this map isn't meant for us?" Richard swallowed hard, torn between reason and wonder, his voice barely above a whisper. Knowledge has always demanded blood. Marcus's gaze was unyielding, his warning final. The candles flickered low, their flames sputtering in surrender to the darkness. Alexander stepped forward, clutching the map like a sacred relic, his resolve immovable. The path ahead was clear. Truth or ruin, there would be no turning back. The silence in the library shattered when a stranger emerged from the shadows, his steps measured, his smile disarming. His name was Adrian Blackwell, a scholar with a reputation for charm and knowledge. Alexander Ward's eyes narrowed, suspicion stirring, yet Adrian bowed politely. Adrian said, "I heard whispers of your discovery. Perhaps I can help." Eleanor Price stiffened, her instincts alerting her to danger. "Help us, or use us," she muttered. Richard Hale adjusted his glasses, curiosity piqued by the newcomer's polished manner. Adrian's tone remained smooth. "The truth is far more dangerous than you realize, but I know things others do not." His gaze lingered on the map with too much familiarity, as if he had studied it long before. Alexander, blinded by obsession, ignored the warning signals Eleanor sensed. The deceiver had entered their circle, cloaked in trust and hidden intentions. Adrian leaned closer to the table, his voice a low murmur filled with confidence. "You seek answers in ink and parchment, but the truth lies beneath what's visible." Alexander Ward studied him with hungry eyes. "Then show us," he demanded. Adrian smirked faintly, running his fingers along the parchment's edge. Symbols flared faintly under his touch, glowing as though awakened by his presence. Eleanor stepped back, alarm flashing across her face. "How do you know this?" she asked sharply. Adrian met her gaze with calm arrogance. "Knowledge is power, and I've spent years cultivating it." Richard Hale shifted uncomfortably, muttering, "No scholar should wield secrets so freely." Marcus Steele's eyes narrowed, recognizing manipulation unfolding before them. Yet Alexander remained enthralled, blinded by the hope of progress. Adrian had seized his chance, weaving himself into the very heart of their fragile alliance. The chamber filled with a tension sharper than blades. Eleanor confronted Adrian, her voice steady despite her unease. "You're not here to help, you want control." Adrian chuckled softly, his charm masking venom. "Control is an illusion. Survival, that's real." Alexander clenched his fists, torn between trust and doubt. Richard spoke cautiously, "If you know so much, prove it. Tell us something the map hides." Adrian leaned back, confidence radiating. "The coastlines are not the secret. The markers etched along them are pathways, gateways." Marcus Steele stepped forward, his presence commanding. "You've said too much," he growled. Eleanor's heart pounded, fear clawing at her as Adrian's words sank in. The map was not just history, it was a blueprint to something far greater. And Adrian the deceiver was steering them all into deeper peril with every calculated phrase. Alexander's obsession blinded him further as he clung to Adrian's every word. Eleanor's frustration boiled over. She slammed her hand against the table, snapping, "You can't trust him." Alexander turned sharply, his eyes burning. "If he has knowledge, I need it," Richard muttered. "Desperation clouds reason." Adrian smiled, his calm demeanor unfaltering. "Knowledge has always been dangerous, but I can guide you safely if you let me." Marcus's glare darkened, his voice low and threatening. "You're poisoning him with half-truths." The candles flickered violently, shadows writhing across the walls like serpents. Eleanor's heart ached as Alexander drifted further from reason, his obsession tethering him to Adrian's manipulations. The group fractured, trust crumbling under the weight of deception. The map seemed to glow brighter, as though feeding on the conflict, its secrets tightening their hold. The night deepened, pressing upon them like a suffocating weight. Adrian's presence had fractured their unity, yet Alexander clutched the map tighter, convinced he was closer to the truth. Eleanor's voice broke with desperation. "You're letting him lead you to ruin." Alexander snapped. "If ruin reveals the truth, so be it." Richard's shoulders slumped, exhaustion etched into his face. Marcus's tone was cold, final. This is no longer pursuit of knowledge. It's war with forces that won't forgive trespass. Adrian's smirk widened, his confidence unshaken. The choice has already been made. The map has chosen its path. A chilling silence followed, broken only by the flutter of pages caught in the draft. Alexander's obsession had chained them all, and now the shadows seemed to watch from every corner, as though the map had awakened something far more sinister. The storm outside returned with vengeance as the group retreated to a smaller study. Alexander Ward unrolled the map again, refusing to let it out of sight. The atmosphere was charged with fear and defiance. "I know, as lamentuan and estimal, and defiance." Suddenly, a familiar figure stepped into the lamplight. Daniel Cross, once Alexander's closest friend and fellow explorer. Alexander froze, disbelief etched across his face. "Daniel, you were gone for years." Daniel smiled faintly, though his eyes were heavy with secrets. "I was searching for the same truth as you." Eleanor Price felt the unease coil in her chest, sensing danger beneath Daniel's charm. Richard Hale whispered, "Another ally or another enemy?" Marcus Steele's glare hardened. The air tightened as past bonds resurfaced, yet something in Daniel's arrival felt wrong. Alexander's heart ached with old loyalty, blind to the fracture waiting to be revealed. The fire crackled weakly in the study, casting shifting shadows as Daniel and Alexander faced each other. Alexander's voice shook with emotion. "I thought you were dead." Daniel smirked faintly. "Not dead, learning what others fear to know." Eleanor's unease sharpened. She said, "Why appear now?" Daniel's tone softened, almost persuasive. "Because you're closer than anyone has ever been." Richard Hale muttered, "Convenient timing." Marcus Steele's eyes narrowed, his instincts screaming danger. Alexander's loyalty battled his reason, torn between friendship and suspicion. Daniel stepped closer, his voice lower, almost intimate. "We wanted this truth together once. I never betrayed that." Yet the weight in his tone carried deception. Eleanor felt it instantly, but Alexander clung to fragments of trust, unaware he was already walking into betrayal's grasp. Hours later, their fragile trust shattered. Daniel revealed knowledge that chilled them all. He whispered of guardians sworn to protect the map, and the blood spilled by those who sought it. Eleanor's face paled, realizing his words aligned too neatly with Marcus's warnings. Richard muttered, "You knew all this, and said nothing." Daniel's smirk faded, replaced by cold truth. "Because some truths demand silence." Alexander felt the sting of betrayal, the friend he trusted now standing on the other side of his quest. He shouted, "You've deceived me all along." Daniel's eyes hardened. "I did it to survive." The map pulsed faintly on the table, feeding the growing tension. Eleanor's heart broke for Alexander, yet she feared the wound Daniel delivered would leave scars deeper than the map's mysteries. The study erupted with shouting as Alexander's fury broke through. He slammed his fist onto the table, shaking the map. "You were my brother, Daniel, and you lied." Daniel's voice cracked, a rare trace of guilt in his tone. "I never stopped searching for the truth. We just chose different paths." Eleanor cried out, "He's using you, Alex. Can't you see?" Richard's voice trembled with exhaustion. "This map destroys bonds as easily as it reveals them." Marcus's glare never softened, his tone sharp. "Trust is weakness. He's already sold you out." Silence followed, broken only by the storm outside. Alexander's chest heaved, torn between rage and sorrow, unable to look away from the man who had once shared his dreams. The fracture of loyalty carved deeper than any wound, and the truth had become an unrelenting curse. The storm reached its peak as betrayal solidified into undeniable truth. Daniel stepped back from the table, his voice cold and final. "The Guardians will come for you now. You've gone too far." Alexander's fury turned into grief, his voice hoarse. "Then you've chosen their side." Eleanor's eyes brimmed with fear and sorrow. She whispered, "He's not your friend anymore." Richard's voice cracked. "He's the betrayer, the key to our downfall." Marcus's hand drifted toward his coat, prepared for what might come next. The candles sputtered, nearly extinguished, leaving faces half buried in shadow. Daniel's silhouette lingered against the storm-lit window, framed by lightning as though fate itself marked him. Alexander clutched the map tightly, his trust shattered forever. The true cost of seeking forbidden truth had been revealed, not only knowledge, but hearts torn apart. The storm subsided into eerie calm as the group gathered in the ruins of the lower library, where forgotten tomes lay in heaps of dust. Alexander Ward unrolled the map on cracked stone, its glow faint but steady. Richard Hale's voice broke the silence, trembling with revelation. "The victim, his fate is bound here. This crest belongs to the vanished explorer Elias Ward, your ancestor." Alexander's heart stopped as the name echoed. Eleanor Price gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Marcus Steele's expression hardened. "It was never random, Alexander. This was always in your blood." Alexander's eyes burned, grief and obsession intertwining. He was lost to history. Now I know why. The weight of generations pressed down, truth clawing deeper than he had ever imagined. The mystery was no longer academic, it was family, and the bloodline had always been cursed to bear it. Alexander's hands shook as he held a brittle manuscript Richard uncovered. The faded ink revealed the tragic account of Elias Ward's disappearance, centuries earlier. Alexander whispered, "He vanished, chasing the same truth I seek." Eleanor's eyes glistened, her voice soft but firm. "Then stop before you suffer the same fate." Marcus's voice cut sharp. "History doesn't forgive repetition." Richard sighed, adjusting his glasses. "This record, it suggests Elias died protecting the map from betrayal within his own circle." Alexander's jaw clenched, fury and sorrow mingling. "Betrayal runs in my family." Daniel Cross' earlier treachery stung deeper, echoing Elias's doom. The map pulsed faintly again, as though alive with memory, binding past and present together. For Alexander, the tragedy of Elias was not only revelation, it was warning. Yet obsession told him it was also destiny. As night deepened, Marcus led them to a hidden chamber beneath the ruins, its walls carved with cryptic runes. He lit a lantern, shadows stretching across the stone. Eleanor whispered, "What is this place?" Marcus answered gravely, "Where secrets are buried, and where warnings echo." The walls depicted explorers falling to ruin, their eyes carved hollow. Richard's voice shook. "These inscriptions, they speak of the price paid by those who followed the map." Alexander traced the carvings, his fingers trembling. "My ancestor was one of them." Eleanor gripped his arm. "And you don't have to be." Adrian Blackwell smirked faintly from the corner, his voice dripping with provocation. "But what if the price is worth the treasure?" The room chilled at his words, shadows pressing close. The chamber was both tomb and testament, where truth whispered in silence too heavy to ignore. The lantern's flame sputtered as Adrian stepped closer, his smirk sharpening. "Your ancestor failed because he lacked resolve. You, Alexander, can succeed." Eleanor's eyes blazed, fury spilling out. "He wants you broken, Alex. Don't listen." Alexander's fists clenched, torn between loyalty and obsession. Richard muttered, "Every word he speaks twists truth into poison." Marcus's glare pierced Adrian. "One more lie, and I end this." Adrian only smiled wider, undeterred. "This map has chosen Alexander, not you." The glow from the parchment intensified, casting eerie light across the chamber. Alexander's heart pounded, caught between past tragedy and present temptation. His voice cracked. "If destiny chose me, how do I refuse it?" Eleanor gripped his arm tighter. "By remembering you're more than a bloodline." Her words pierced the suffocating tension, though Alexander's gaze remained chained to the glowing map. The air thickened with unbearable weight, the glow from the map flaring brighter as if feeding on conflict. Alexander's voice trembled, raw with anguish. "Elias was betrayed. I was betrayed. How do I escape a curse written in blood?" Eleanor's tears spilled freely, her voice breaking. "By breaking the chain, Alex. Don't let this consume you. Richard whispered. History repeats only if we allow it. Marcus's tone was iron, unyielding. Choose wisely, or the keepers will take more than your soul. Adrian's smirk faded, revealing cold menace. The truth demands sacrifice. You are already bound. Lightning struck above, thunder rattling the chamber like a warning. Alexander clutched the map, his knuckles white, torn between legacy and choice. The silence that followed felt like a final breath before judgment, as though the walls themselves awaited his decision. The underground chamber quaked as thunder roared above, dust falling from the cracked ceiling. Alexander Ward stood at the center, clutching the glowing map like a shield. Adrian Blackwell stepped forward, his voice calm yet venomous. "Give it to me, Alexander. You were never meant to bear this burden." Eleanor Price cried out, desperation lacing her tone. "Don't listen, he only wants to control you." Richard Hale muttered, trembling. "This is the final reckoning." Marcus Steele drew closer, his voice like iron. "Stand firm, Alexander. Choose truth, not chains." Alexander's heart pounded as his ancestor's shadow loomed over him. Betrayal, warnings, sacrifice, everything converged in this moment. His voice broke, hoarse but resolute. "I won't surrender. Not to you, not to anyone." The chamber's walls echoed with power, the map thrumming like a living heart, waiting for its master's decision. The chamber's glow intensified, symbols across the map blazing like fire. Adrian's mask slipped, his charm replaced by rage. "You think you can defy centuries of guardianship?" he hissed. Alexander's grip tightened, defiance flaring in his eyes. Eleanor stepped closer, tears streaking her cheeks. "Alex, don't let him twist you. Remember why you began this." Richard's voice trembled with awe. "The map reacts to his will. It's choosing." Marcus stepped between Adrian and Alexander, steel in his tone. "Touch him and you face me." Adrian sneered, but shadows stirred behind him, as if answering his fury. Alexander felt the weight of choice pressing down, his ancestors whispering through memory. His chest heaved as he shouted, "This ends tonight." The chamber pulsed violently, a storm of light and darkness colliding as destiny sharpened into confrontation. Lightning split the sky above, shaking the chamber as betrayal's wound reopened. Daniel Cross stepped from the shadows, guilt shadowing his face. "I never wanted this, Alex, but it's too late." Alexander's fury erupted. "You betrayed me, just as Elias was betrayed." Eleanor shouted, "Don't let his weakness break you again." Richard's voice cracked, horror in his eyes. "The cycle repeats." Marcus growled, drawing closer. "Then end the cycle. End him if you must." Daniel's eyes brimmed with regret, but his stance remained firm, blocking Alexander's path. Adrian smirked from behind, reveling in the fracture. Alexander's chest heaved, his knuckles whitening around the glowing map. "No more betrayal, no more chains," he roared. The chamber groaned, power vibrating through stone as the final confrontation loomed, its weight undeniable and unforgiving. The air cracked with force as Alexander raised the map high, its light surging outward like a storm. Adrian lunged, his face twisted with fury, shadows stretching toward him. Marcus intercepted with unyielding strength, his voice a roar. "You'll not claim him." Eleanor rushed forward, her hand gripping Alexander's arm, grounding him. "Fight it, Alex. You're stronger than this." Richard collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the sight, muttering prayers under his breath. Daniel staggered back, regret consuming him as he whispered, "I was wrong." The chamber erupted with blinding light, every carved rune igniting. Alexander's voice thundered over the chaos. "The truth is mine to protect, not yours to enslave." The storm inside the chamber reached its peak, light and shadow colliding, forcing each soul to reveal where they truly stood. When the storm of light faded, silence consumed the chamber. Adrian lay defeated, his arrogance shattered, while Daniel fell to his knees, broken by guilt. Richard Hale lifted his trembling gaze, whispering, It's over. But at what cost? Eleanor Price turned to Alexander, tears streaming. You're free, Alex. Let it end. Marcus Steele's stern gaze softened slightly. The map is no prize. It is a curse. Alexander looked down at the parchment, glowing faintly in his hands. His voice cracked, heavy with grief. It showed us the truth, but truth demands sacrifice. With trembling resolve, he placed the map onto the stone altar and stepped back. The glow dimmed, fading into silence. The chamber exhaled as though relieved. For Alexander, the mystery was not solved but sealed, forever a glimpse of knowledge the world was never meant to wield.